All right, here we are on the last page. Number 21, a 6-foot man casts a 10-foot shadow. The tree next to the man casts a 30-foot shadow. How tall is the tree? Pretty straightforward stuff. It creates two right triangles, as you see there. So you have the 6-foot tall man with his 10-foot shadow, then the tree, which you don't know the height, with the 30-foot shadow, and then you just make a proportion. You know, the easiest one is to go small side to small side, and then bigger side to bigger side. 6 over x equals 10 over 30. Cross multiply. 10x equals 180. Divide x is 10. Write the inverse, converse, contrapositive, and biconditional of the following statements. So we'll go through this. Inverse is a if not P then Q. Actually, let me step back a second now that I'm looking at this. Don't forget that after the if, that's your hypothesis. After the then, that's your conclusion. So there's where the P and Q's are coming from. So now back to that. Inverse is a negation of the original order. So P and Q stay where they're at, but we negate them, which means the opposite. Normally that means adding a not, because the majority of statements we read are kind of positive. I studied, I will pass the test. So when we do the inverse and negate them, we're looking at if I do not pass the test, then I will not study. So the statements become negative versions. Remember, if the statement started negative, you have to make it positive in a negation. Converse, you actually flip the order. The conclusion goes to the end. The hypothesis comes to the conclusion goes to the front. The hypothesis comes to the back. So if I do not pass the test, then I did not study. Again, now this is multiple choice, so if there's questions about this, you have to choose them, but you can slightly change words to make the statement make sense, right? So you're not writing a sentence that just sounds weird, as long as you don't change meaning. That's the key thing there. Contrapositive is a combination. It is both the inverse and converse at the same time. If not Q, then not P. So again, you'll notice if I do not pass the test, then I did not study. And the order is flipped as well. Biconditional, no if or then needed. So we take the if then part out of it. It's hypothesis, if and only if, conclusion. So I study if and only if I will pass the test. Again, it sounds a little bit awkward as a sentence, but if you need to change a word or two here, I will study if and only if I will pass the test, or I did study if and only if I pass the test. That doesn't really change too much meaning there. All right, moving on. 22. If AB is the angle bisector of angle DAC and angle BAC is 52 degrees, what is the measure of DAC? So a couple things here. Angle bisector is a segment that divides the angle in half. It cuts it down the middle. So here you have BAC is 52 degrees, which means this side's going to be 52 because you're cutting it in half. Well, they're both 52, so obviously you add those up, you get 104, right? So 52 plus 52 is where we get 104. Add them up. 23, determine the lengths of JH and HK. So you have a right triangle here. You see the little box right there. And then you also have an altitude right here. This is setting up geometric mean. Okay? And so we don't need the altitude in the middle. We need X and Y, the two legs on the side. So remember, for X, that is a geometric mean between the whole hypotenuse and the part it's close to. Right? So you see that right there, 32 over X equals X over 8. Remember, the X value, the geometric mean, will be diagonal to itself, and then the other two values you use go across. Cross multiply, you get X squared equals 256. Square root both sides. The square root is actually 16. On the Y over here, that's the geometric mean between the whole hypotenuse and the part of the hypotenuse it's closest to. So y diagonal to itself, 32 and 24 in the other values. Cross multiply, you get 768 is y squared. Square root those, and you get about 27.713. So geometric mean on those two. 24, find x. So this is not drawn to scale. You'll notice we draw a line here to turn this trapezoid into a rectangle and a triangle. And obviously on the bottom, that 3 and 7 split is not very accurate, but it just means if this were to be drawn more realistically, it should be longer. It should be longer, obviously, for that 10 to be much bigger than just a plain 3. But for what it's worth, what it does create here is a right triangle. And basically now, with what we have, we're looking for a hypotenuse. Right, so there's your right triangle. We label A, we label B, and we're finding C. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. 6 squared and 7 squared, 36 and 49 is 85. You square root that. You get about 9.219, which we put as 9.220 on the round off. Okay, so just once we set it up, basic Pythagorean theorem. 25 is another Pythagorean theorem, more straightforward version. So very simple. You have A, your small side, B, the middle, and you're looking for C. So 10 squared plus x squared equals 20 squared. 10 squared is 100, 20 squared is 400. One of the little things, and it should, most of you should know this by now, but you have to subtract this 100 to the other side, right? The one mistake when we had some of these problems on the quiz was that y'all just took any two numbers and put them from A and B. You have to put A and B and C, for that matter, in the correct position. So when you subtract this 100 over from itself first, of course, and then from the 400, that's where we get 300. Then you square root that because the x or b is squared, and you get about 17.321. How tall is the building? So you obviously see the entire height has to go from B here all the way straight down. There you go, try it in red. So far, we only have the 5 feet. We're missing that part. So it is a right triangle. You'll see the little box, and then you have the altitude coming out. So we're going to have to do, again, geometric mean. Now, this one happens to be set up in a way, sorry, I was trying to erase, where what's normally a variable is not a variable right now. But that's okay. That doesn't change anything. The altitude here is 10. So you put 10 diagonal to itself. And that's the geometric mean between the two pieces that the hypotenuse is divided into, which is x and 5. When you cross multiply that, you're going to get 5x equals 100. Simply divide by 5 is x, divide by 5 and x is 20. Hopefully you realize, though, that's not the answer to the problem. We said we needed the whole height, which is 20 is BD, plus the extra 5 to get 25. 27 was on the symmetry test back when, right before Christmas break. And again, the major problem a lot of y'all made is that y'all did not consider this the whole side of the triangle. Right? A lot of you just used 24 by itself instead of combining it to make a 64. So proportion here, d over 60 equals 64 over 40. Cross multiply, 40d equals 3,840. Divide by 40, you get 96. Which a lot of you got 36 the first time, which, obviously that should not make any sense, given that this is supposed to be longer than the 60 below it. And then last but not least, which of the following triangles are not congruent? So you'll see here that those two triangles on left and right are congruent by AAS, right? Angle, side. Here, again, this is a parallelogram. The top and bottom, left and right, are parallel. You create those alternate interior angles. It's always going to be congruent. It's ASA because there's an angle matching. They share the side. Then you go down to the other angle matching, ASA. C, you have the right angle, You have these vertical angles here, and then the side that matches AAS. I shouldn't circle that because that's not the answer. I was just showing it. And then D, all three angles. There's an angle there, there's the right angle, and then the verticals. But AAA does not show congruence. That's why it's the answer to our question. All right, so that's the last of page 3. If you've watched all these videos, I hope they've helped you. I hope you're ready. Yeah, good luck, and see you during the week.